This is the best Ableton feature, in my opinion of course. I really think that any Ableton user needs to use this feature. It can save you hours of time and it can boost your creativity. Of course, I'm talking about audio effect racks, and in particular, I want to show you how you can build one yourself. Notice this tab sounds a bit thin. Let's add my distortion rack. Notice also how the delay getting slower. That's my creative delay rack. Listen to how the percussion disappears slowly with an underwater effect for my transitions and drop rack. But the percussion loop sounds a bit dry. Let's add the reverb rack, where I can easily dial the room size. And finally, let's add the glitch rack, which we will make together in this video. All of these racks are part of my Audio Alchemist collection rack, and you can get them in the link below. So we're going to be working on this percussion loop. And we're going to build an insane glitch machine rack. In the audio effects tab, in delay and loop, let's grab a beat repeat. Let's start with Command G to group this. In order to make an audio effect rack, you can just group any plugin. First of all, I want no triplets in my repeat, so let's toggle that. If you leave this plugin on mix mode, it will play the original sound together with the repeats. If you toggle the insert mode, it will mute the original sound when the repeats are happening. On gate mode, it will mute the original sound altogether. Let's keep it on insert for now. I want an interval of 1 bar. Let's change our gate to 4 out of 16. So this beat repeat will only play the first beat of the first bar. Let's add the chants to macro 1 and the variations to macro 2. The chants will be repeat wet dry, and the variation we will call pattern or random. And I will explain in a minute why. Let's copy this repeat. And let's choose them both and copy them again. Let's change the offset of these two beat repeats so they're only playing the second beat. Let's copy these two as well. Control D to copy. Let's change the offset of these two so they're playing the third beat of the bar. Let's copy them once more, and these two will play the last beat of the bar. So we have 8 beat repeats. Each pair is playing 1 beat of the bar. Visually, you can see that by these yellow boxes. Next, let's add this grid to macro 3, second one to macro 4, third one to macro 5. Let's continue with this pattern, so fourth one to the first grid, this to the second grid, to the third grid. We have 2 more. First grid, second grid. Let's collapse all the beat repeats. We have 3 grids and we can change the pattern. Let's put this on 32. This on 16th and this on 8th. So far it's playing a repeated pattern with the repeats, but we can change this knob to add some randomization. Remember, this is controlling the variations of all the beat repeats, and that's why I toggled the no triplets on, so there is no triplets when we add more variation. A cool trick I like to do is just automate the dry wet knob of this plugin. We're not done just yet. We can make this glitch machine a lot more crazier. In order to do that, let's grab a pitch loop 89. Let's drop that into a rack, and let's also add a glue compressor, because a glue compressor has a soft clipper to make sure the thing's not going out of control. Let's start by assigning the dry wet to macro 6 and the freeze of the left side to macro 6 as well. And let's call this glitch. Let's give these a yellow color so we know they're all related, and we will give this one an orange color. Let's assign the back to macro 7, short to macro 8, random to macro 9, segment to macro 2, vibrato rate to macro 11, and vibrato depth to macro 12. Let's quickly name them and give them all the same color, so we know they're related as well. Now that we named them, let's see what this plugin can do. So the way this plugin works is really simple. When this freeze button is toggled on, it will freeze the incoming audio and repeat that infinitely. We can add some reverse. Let's add some short. Nice. Let's add some randomness. Let's change the size. Let's add 5 semitones of vibrato. Let's add 12. And let's automate the glitch. So I hope you understand now why I think this is the best Ableton feature. It has such big potential for sound design, for boosting your creativity, and making racks that saves you hours in your production time, so you can spend that time making music. Hello everyone. Does this ever happen to you? You're working on your beats, you're creating your percussion loops, and the work feels boring, tedious, and uninspiring, and eventually you come up with the same rhythms. Well, it happens to me all the time. So I came up with this technique of using any delay plugin in any DAW to create infinite amount of creative rhythms for your percussions. In this video, you will also learn how to do layering and mixing of your percussions. So let's get straight into it. So the first thing that you need is a sample. I chose this hi-hat. The second thing that you need is a delay plugin. It really doesn't matter which one you use, you can even just choose a preset that you like. I chose this preset from the Echo plugin. Cool. Next thing, you need to record this into audio. Okay, third thing, let's repeat that once more with a different delay preset. Let's repeat that once more. This time I chose Timeless by FabFilter and I chose this preset, which I'm finding quite difficult to pronounce. Cool. Now you have 3 completely different versions of the same hi-hat. Okay, the fourth thing that we need to do is start arranging this. And just notice how some of the elements here are already panned left and right. That would save you a lot of time down the line, meticulously panning things left and right. So at the moment, my beat sounds like this. Let's take the first loop, zoom in a bit, and cut it like so. And I want to repeat this once every bar. To keep your loop interesting, I like to repeat certain elements every bar, certain elements every half a bar, and let's say some other elements every quarter of a bar, just to make sure that things never repeat exactly the same. Next, let's take this loop, I will cut it like so, and let's repeat this every half a bar. Next, let's take this element, cut the first bit of it, let's repeat this every 2 bars, but not exactly the same. Okay, this needs a bit of mixing. The first thing I want to do, I want to make this tighter. So in Ableton you can do that by highlighting all of these percussions, click down here, head to the warp section, choose beats, keep it on transient, change to forward and stop, and reduce the elements. Let's listen how it sounds before and after. Nice, quite a big difference actually. That's one thing. Second thing, I added an EQ to isolate this area, so cut anything below 800, cut anything above 4.6k, and a bit of a boost around 1.6k to make it cut through the mix a bit more. Also add a sidechain to the kick. Next, let's mix this loop. So I added an EQ to cut anything below 900 and making a boost around 7k to make it a bit brighter. I added a Redux, which is a bit reduction plugin, which will make it cut through the mix a bit more. And added a compression to make it a bit more plucky, attack all the way up, release all the way down, and gain reduction of less than 5 dB, and sidechain to the kick. On the last hit, only an EQ to cut anything below 2K and adding a high shelf around 9K, so just to make it a bit more brighter. Let's have a listen to all of these together. I want to show you another example, but before that, if you're enjoying this video and finding it useful, consider subscribing to my channel. That'll be really helpful. Thanks. So the reason this technique can create you infinite amount of creative rhythms is because any DAW contains several delay plugins, and there's plenty third-party plugins that you can buy with many different presets. So the possibilities are really endless, and I want to show you how I did the same thing, but with a different sample and with different delay presets. So I chose this sample. And first of all, I took the Valhalla Supermassive. I made this preset myself and it sounds like this. So let's already record it into audio. Let's take the same sample, but this time with this preset from the Echo plugin. So I'm working on the same beat. I want to copy these two loops and maybe just change them a bit. Next, let's take those two samples that we just recorded and let's add them into the loop. So I want to repeat this, but not exactly the same. We will do something like so. And I'll repeat this. Let's listen to what we have so far. So first thing, let's take this loop. I added an EQ with a boost around 800, boost around 6K, and a cut around 1.6. I added a Redux to make a cut through the mix. Next, I added a few processing to this mix, a bit of EQ to just clean up the sound, added a pedal, which is a distortion plugin, and a bit of a sidechain to the kick. And when it's all together, so welcome to the third video in the series about free Max for Live devices. Let's start with this amazing sound design tool. It's called Image to Wavetable. It allows you to take any photo, such as this lovely photo of my kitties, and create a wavetable out of it that you can use in a wavetable synthesizer of your choice, such as Serum, Vital, or Wavetable in Ableton. So take your photo and drag it in this little black box. If I change the background to black, you can see Hazel here, Amanda here, all in black and white. They're very adorable. Next, all you need to do is click on this little gray circle, and then you can save it in the folder of your choice. Let's call this one Kitties. On a MIDI channel, I have the wavetable synthesizer. In the Finder, find a wavetable and drag and drop it here where it says Basic Shapes. Make sure to click on Raw, and you can see the outline of Hazel and Amanda right here. Let's listen to how these cats sound as a wavetable. Ooh. This sounds nice. Sick. In order to make something useful out of this patch, we need to add a bit of movement into it, but using traditional LFO shapes is boring. We can do something a bit more interesting. If you are already familiar with Max for Live devices, you should know about the Inspired by Nature pack by Dylan Bastan, and if you don't, you should go check it out. One plugin that no one is talking about is the Vector Map. And for those of you who are not familiar with this plugin, I will explain how it works in really short. Let's start by increasing the voices to 5. In the plus tab, we have the attractor. That is this little grey box. And you can think about it as a magnetic field where the balls are attracted to this box. So notice what happens when I increase the strength. Let's turn the attractor off and turn the flow field on. A line is attached to each grey circle. These are directing the movement of the ball. Let's head to the last tab. Let's start by decreasing the speed so the balls are floating nice and slowly. Let's increase the mass to change the size of the ball. If I click anywhere on the screen, you will create a new set of balls. And now you can see that we have big balls and we have little balls. How lovely is that? Let's head to the mapping tab. Let's assign the first ball to the wavetable position. Let's assign the second ball to the sync. Let's assign the third ball to the detune. Let's take the fourth one, assign it to the PW. And lastly, let's take the last ball and assign it to the global time. Let's also set this ball modulation to be controlled by how far away it moves from the center. Let's also add a bit of reverb and a bit of distortion. For the reverb, I will use a free Max for Live device plugin called Romb. Next, I want to play this patch and turn the vector map on and off so you can see how much movement it adds to this patch. So let's say I was really happy with this sound design, which I was, but I forgot to record it to audio. So on the master channel I have this plugin called Audio Treasure, and it records the last 2 minutes of your session. All you need to do is click write to disk and then save it into your computer. In your Finder, find the file and drag and drop it back into your project. And here we have it. How crazy is that? Such a useful little plugin. I realized that my blue light has died, so I had to charge it. Anyway, the next plugin is called Mix Matcher. This plugin allows you to see and match different channels in your project. That allows you to make better mixing decisions. So in the first tab, let's load our kick and bass, and in the second tab, let's load our percussions. And as you can see, it's already color coded. Kick and bass in red, percussions in yellow. This plugin is loaded onto the patch we just made. Notice how you can see really beautifully each channel on this spectrum. Really useful plugin. Lastly, we have two adorable plugins called pitch and time converters. So I found one really good use for it, and that is to convert notes into time. And I use it mainly when I use different delays to make risers. So a fourth note is 429 seconds. Let's change the delay from sync to time, and let's toggle 429. And let's add a dot in the automation lane. Let's check how much is a 30-second note. That is 53 seconds. Let's head back to our automation lane, and let's edit the value to 53. I would love to see in the comments what other uses you have for these plugins. Okay, so we will start with this episode by recreating the acid lead in this track, this one. What's wrong with this lead? Nothing much really, but I think that if we make this lead from scratch, we will have a lot more control about it, and also you will learn how to make a good acid lead. Right, let's get straight into it. So what I wanted to do first of all is recreate the MIDI pattern. So I wanted to save you the boring part, and I went and recreated this lead, and it looks like this. Let's solo it. This sound is just the default preset in Vital. Let's open our Vital. The free version of Vital only comes with a limited amount of sounds and wavetables, so I'm using the wavetables I have from Serum. So if you own Serum, you will have all of these wavetables yourself, but Doesn't matter which wavetable you're using, it matters the principles of how you do it. So in Serum, I will choose the acid lead. So at the moment, nice, nothing fancy. Let's start by going to envelope 2 and reducing the sustain to around 30% and the decay to around 300 milliseconds. It doesn't have to be precise. Let's add macro 1 to the decay and also to the sustain. I want this envelope to control the filter. Let's take the filter first of all the way down, and let's assign envelope 2 to the filter cutoff. So at the moment, okay, I want the envelope to only control the filter just halfway through, like this. Sounds really thin at the moment, but don't worry. Let's add macro 2 to the filter cutoff. So if I want, I can really open the sound up like this. We can add a bit of drive here in the filter. And we can also play with the different modes. So we have analog, we have dirty, we have ladder, and digital. Yeah, I think we're gonna go with the dirty. I also want the sound to be compressed, so let's add a compressor. This is a really nice multi-band compressor, very similar to the OTT preset if you're familiar with that. It really helps to squish in all the dynamic and make the sound a bit brighter. Let's turn it off. Yeah, like that's not too much in your face, but it just helps to squish a bit the dynamics, which will help the sound stand out a bit more. Let's go back to a voice tab. I want to add 3 voices. At the moment, it will sound a bit weird, so as I play the sound, I will reduce the detune. But notice what happens when I play the sound in mono. A lot of it is quite disappearing because it's very wide. Notice how much of the sound is actually disappearing when you have 3 voices and with a lot of detune. When I reduced the voices to 1, suddenly the sound was a lot more crunchy, a lot more in your face. That's what I want to keep. So if you go to the advanced section, we have stereo unison. We can actually reduce that. The sound will still be wide, but it will be much more mono compatible. So it's important to have mono compatibility for your main sounds to make sure that they can translate on any system. One more thing that I want to do in the synth is take macro 3 and assign that to the wavetable position. It almost acts as an extra resonance for the sound. Really, really cool. So that is pretty much it inside the synth, but there is a few more processing that I want to do outside of the synth. Let's start by adding some distortion. I always really like to add a bit of overdrive. Just 10% works really well. Just adds a bit more of a crunch. I also really like the Magma Little Tube. It's a plugin Waves Audio released on Black Friday 2022, and it's actually a really nice distortion. Let's get the sensitivity from normal to high, and let's start adding some drive. Such nice crunch. let's change the sensitivity back to normal. I really like the high. I think we actually lost quite a lot of volume, so let's add it back. If you look here, you can see that we actually lost a lot of volume. Let's add it back. Nice one, sounding really cool. Next, let's add some delay and reverb. Let's start with the Valhalla Supermassive. Let's change the delay time from milliseconds to notes. Let's keep it on 16th. Let's change the mode from Gemini to Virgo. Really nice delay. Let's set the EQ to cut anything above 7K and anything below 500 Hz. As I play the sound, I will change the other settings. Nice one. Let's add a bit of reverb. For the reverb, I will use Comet. And the reason I really like to use Comet is because of these 5 slots in the bottom here. The first time I make a lead in a track like this, I'm gonna set 5 different reverbs from a really small one to a big one, so I have a range of reverbs that I can use in my track. I will just copy and paste this one reverb, and I can use different settings on different sounds to make sure that they're not clashing with each other. So this sound might have a small to medium reverb to keep it up front, and a different sound might have a medium to a large reverb to put it a bit more in the background. So let's do that. In the preset, I always like to start with This Can Fit. This is the smallest reverb you can get. It sounds super crunchy. If I turn the plugin off, nice. Next one, let's add a bit of a slightly bigger reverb. Let's go for the wide dry. Number 1, smallest one, and the second one. What do we have in number 3? Okay, let's add a bit of EQ. We don't want anything in the low frequencies to come through the reverb. For number 2, we can do something like that, so it's slightly darker. Number 3 can be a bit darker than this one. Huge epic, let's reduce a bit the size. We can keep like this. I want this one to be even bigger. So number 4 has a size of 56. Let's put size of about 65. And we'll cut quite a bit of the lows and quite a bit of the highs. go through all the reverbs. For this sound, let's go for the second one. It doesn't have to be too big. We want between a small to a medium reverb. Next, let's add a mid-side EQ. What is mid-side EQ? So imagine you have two monitors or two headphones, one from the left, one from the right. And there's certain information such as the kick, the snare, the hat, the leads that will sound exactly the same on both monitors. There's some information such as the delays, the reverbs, the different effects that we have, sound that might pan between the different monitors that will sound differently on each of the monitors or on each of the headphones, on each side of the headphones. So we will EQ these parts separately. So in Ableton or in any other DAW, grab a utility plugin and an EQ plugin. Let's group them so I can save it to a rack afterwards and I can use it again. Where it says width right here, right click and change to mid-side mode. So right now we are listening to the mid information. And now we're listening to the side. Let's change the mode of the EQ from stereo to mid-side. Let's start by EQing the mid. All of this low information will clash with our bass, so it's unnecessary. All of this sounds very muddy. This as well. But I really like that, it sounds crunchy. Can definitely cut this. I'll make another one here. Yeah, let's make a little cut there. Let's listen to the before and after. Let's EQ the side information now. Let's change the mode to side. I know that I want to have that. We want to cut anything from the lows. Yeah, probably from around 400 Hz. Let's cut here another one. Let's make another bell. Yeah, notice I'm not cutting exactly the same where the mids are. Here I do need to make a cut. Let's cut also the high frequencies because we don't need any width in the high frequencies too much. Let's put it back to 0 and let's compare the before and after. So, before it sounded like this, and after. Really nice. Notice how the sound is clean and concentrated. Beautiful. Next, I want to add an auto filter after everything. And let's put all of these into the group. And then I can assign the filter to macro 4. So what I will do now, I will do some automation. I will play it in fast forward and then I will come back and we will hear how it sounds in context. start creating drum fills for your tracks, or you simply don't have the time, these two methods are guaranteed to get you tons of fresh drum fills to keep you inspired. So for the first method, we'll be using the follow actions in Ableton. I have here a bunch of samples. Make sure to highlight all of them, head to this box, scroll down, click on follow action. Second thing you want to do is click on the warp. This seems quite confusing at first, but we will keep it really simple. You have this slider, which will tell you 100% of the time it will trigger the next sample. Or if I slide it 100% to the right, there will be no action. Let's keep it 100% to the left, and out of all of these options, we will choose any, which means that we'll select a random sample to play next. Make sure to unlink, and we have this number. This represents 1 bar. So let's go to the right where it says 0 and drag all the way down. This represents a 16th note. So I'll play these samples and they will all trigger in a 16th note pattern. I want to make sure that some of these samples have different lengths to them, so they're not all repeating in the exact same pattern. So let's select this sample, and you see that we have this blue marker which sits on a 16th note. Let's drag this to be an 8th note. Let's select another random one, and let's drag this to be a quarter note. Let's actually select a few more and make them a bit longer as well. The next step is recording all of these. Press tab to go back to the arrangement view, Ableton, and let's press play. Amazing. Now I have all of these fills that I can use in my track. Yo, if you're enjoying this video so far, please subscribe to my channel. That'll be much appreciated. I want to show you another really cool way to make these transitions, and it won't even take you that long to make. So I loaded the drum rack with the same percussion, except one, which was a bit annoying. Next, head to the MIDI effect tab and search for bouncy notes. This is a Max for Live device, which you can download for free if you're on Ableton 10, I think, and above. It looks quite scary, but actually, for this video, we will keep it really simple. First thing, press on this piano tab and turn the drum rack on, so it can detect all of these samples here. Click on Auto and keep this on press. Next thing we want to do is to make sure that every drum is quantized, because this plugin can go really crazy. So we'll keep the note length and quantize on 16th. The next thing that we need to do is just press play. And suddenly we have this huge file with a bunch of drum fills. And it wasn't even that difficult. I didn't really need to set anything up. Well, I did, but just a few things. I kept it simple, and that's the main thing. And let's see what kind of drum fills we can extract out of this. That was pretty cool. Let's try another one. That was absolutely sick. Imagine you had to go and select all of these drums and put each one in the right position, and then also write down this exact rhythm. That would take you such a long time. Here, in 2 minutes, and I got this crazy drum fill, which I would never manage to get otherwise. Let me introduce you to one of the most amazing sound design plugins I own, the Supermodel. So on the left hand side, we have a filter. You can change between a low pass, band pass, and a high pass. But where this plugin really comes to life is with the modal section on the right hand side. Explaining to you what a modal filter is quite boring, so I'll just show it. So let's turn the blend all the way to the right. The possibilities here are endless. The next thing this plugin is really good at is adding movement and making any sustained sound rhythmic. So let's take this obnoxious sound. Let me show you how you can make something really beautiful out of it. Let's start with adding a sequencer in modulation slot 1. You have 100 different shapes you can choose from, but I will choose number 50. You can use your mouse to draw anywhere in the sequencer. You can also change the shape, like so. And I can change it from unipolar to bipolar. Let's take our input all the way down and assign the sequencer to the input. Let's add a bit of drive and let's add another sequencer to modulate the filter. And let's add 36 semitone. Let's add another sequencer and this time we will add a random sequencer. Let's put it on the rate of 4th and assign it to the filter on -36 dB. And let's change both of these modulation to happen in stereo by clicking on this little circle. Already sounding pretty cool. Remember we started with this. Let's add another random sequencer on a rate of 16th, and this one we will assign to the blend. Let's also choose a different modal filter and modulate that as well. Pretty sick. By the way, no one is paying me to make this video. I truly think this is a game changer plugin, but if you want to support me, you can purchase this plugin from the affiliate link in the description below. This plugin is also really useful chorus, flanger and phaser effect. Let's take the same sound that we just made and I'll show you how. Let's start by introducing a sequencer and let's change the shape to number 2. Let's unsync it from the host tempo. Let's add a bit of drive and let's modulate the filter. In order to change it into a flanger, all you need to do is decrease the modulation speed. Changing it into a phaser is as simple. Let's turn the blend all the way to the right, so we're using the modal section of this filter, and let's choose the shepherd. You can do a really cool thing with this plugin using white noise. Let's start by turning the blend all the way to the left and turning the filter all the way down. Let's add sequencer number 1 on a shape of 50 and let's again draw the shape like so. Let's do the same with sequencer number 2, but we will change the shape to A to make it a bit more circular. Let's also change the rate of sequencer 1 to happen every 2 bars. Let's change both sequencers to unipolar. Let's reduce the input and let's assign sequencer 2 to the input. Let's assign sequencer 1 to the filter. So far nothing interesting, but notice what happens when we add a meta knob. Let's take our meta knob and assign it to the blend and to the filter. Remember we started with a simple white noise. This plugin is also really useful in adding gentle movement to basic sounds to make them sound lush and expensive. So let's take this sound and let's turn the super modal on. So we have 3 sequencers modulating the filter and we have 1 sequencer modulating the distortion. You can also take a hi-hat loop like so. And turn it into this. But notice this bass with the super modal on. or this snare loop. So you can create stuff like this. Or stuff like this. So as you can see, the possibilities of sound design with this plugin are endless. Today we are going to talk about 3 Max for Live devices that you need to use. So the first one is called Pluck, and this is the guitar emulator, and it's sounding sick. So I have here a little sequence, and let's play it together with this track I'm working on. So first of all, you can change the fret intensity. You also have a dump control. This essentially reduces the high frequencies from the guitar. And finally, we have a decay knob, which controls the length of each note. The next plugin is called Tombola, or Tombola, I'm not quite sure. This is a really interesting sequencer. To make sure the sequencer doesn't get out of control, let's mute some of the notes. At the moment, all of the balls are locked inside of this box. Let's change the shape so the ball can escape. Let's change the speed so it starts spinning, and the balls hitting the lines will activate the sequencer. You can also change the gravity and mass of the ball. Next we have a plugin called Pitch Hack. This is a free download from the Creative Extensions pack on the Ableton website. I will add a link in the description below. Let's start by increasing the dry wet to 100%. You can already notice some changes in the sound. Let's introduce some reverse. And recycle is basically a feedback knob. This is where the plugin comes to life. I actually made a rack with this plugin, which is a collection of 9 essential racks for Ableton. You can get them in the link below, and I will also link a video from my YouTube channel with a demonstration of these racks. The next plugin is called Spect. This is a really cool plugin that allows you to extract either the noise or the tonal element of every sound. So if you're into degrading audio in cool ways, this plugin is for you. It can work on any sound, but for this demonstration, let's use a percussion loop. Let's start with the tonal mode. Let's change it to noise mode. I really like the way this plugin works with the lowest setting with the size and overlap. Let's change it back to tonal. I would love to see in the comments, what will you use this plugin for? The next plugin is called J-Disperser. So if you're not familiar with what a disperser is, this is an all-pass filter. Imagine 50 filters together. So it can help you destroy the transients and make sounds really wet. This is a big money saver because there is a plugin by Kilohertz called Disperser, which is doing the exact same thing, but costs about £60. Let's play it on the same percussion loop and start by increasing the Q. Notice what happens to the transient of the sounds. You can change the frequency. And you can add some modulation. This is really cool. We started with this. So after we added all of these plugins, or generally if you work with a lot of plugins, you might run into CPU problems. In this case, Muda is the plugin for you. So drop Muda on any channel, and when you mute the channel, it's supposed to mute all of the plugins in this channel. Really useful plugin if you're trying to save on CPU. And the last one is Notepad. Sometimes you can just write stuff like, do you ever struggle achieving a high quality sounding beat? Today, I want to present you with 6 techniques that can be applied in any electronic dance music genre, using any DAW to help you build and polish a professional sounding beat. Let's talk about sound placement. Think about drum and percussion placement in the frequency spectrum. We want to make sure that we're filling in the entire frequency spectrum with our percussion. So a red line is representing our kick and the hi-hats sitting up here. So I have here a very basic beat which needs some layers. Let's start by enhancing this hat. Added this layer to make it pop through the mix. Underneath, I added this hi-hat loop. And all together, it sounds like this. These are the hi-hats done. Next, let's talk about snare layering. So I want to choose 2 snares which has 2 different characteristics. One will be a bit more white and one will have a bit more body. So started with this snare. Sounds quite white. And this is the snare which has a bit more body. I wanted to add a reverb layer, so choose a reverb for your choice and record that into audio. And now I have this. I also took a white snare and I recorded that with the same reverb. I reversed it and added before every second snare. Next technique is called Dynamic Groove Enhancement. Think about making the groove more exciting by filling in the gaps with mid-range frequencies. My favorite way to do that is taking one-shot samples or fragments of percussion loops. In this case, I'm using samples for my new sample pack, Spectral Percussions. So starting by adding this sound, and as you can see, if I drag it here, it has a whole loop to it, followed by this sound, which is made out of the same loop. I took a different loop, and I took this sound out of it, and I did the same thing with this one. And in context, there's actually a few more things that we need to do, and that's to make sure that everything is glued nicely together. So I put all of these percussions into a group. First thing, added a glue compressor with high attack and medium release. Then I added a tad of saturation and a really small reverb. So a loop started like this. And we ended up like this. If you think that was sick, give this video a like. For our next technique, we will use a different beat for a bit of variety. Sounds pretty good, but it's going to sound way better really quickly. First thing I did is put all the percussions in a group and then added this plugin called Fracture. If you're not familiar with this plugin, it's a free plugin by Glitch Machines. Go check it out because it can do crazy stuff. So I will put it on 100% dry wet, and now we have this. As you can hear, it completely destroyed the audio. What I want to do is blend it with the original drum beat. In order to do it in Ableton, Command G to group, then click this icon here, right click and add another chain. Control R to call this chain wet and this chain dry. Make sure that you leave the dry chain with no plugins at all, and to the wet chain let's add a bit of a reverb. Let's choose a medium reverb with a medium decay and about 30% of dry wet. Let's decrease the wet chain to 0 and let's blend that in. I think this sounds pretty cool, but if you're not happy with this result, you can go to Fracture, and by clicking this question mark, you can randomize the plugin, which will achieve really cool results every time. The next technique is a technique that Mr. Bill uses all the time to hook the listeners, and it what makes his beat sounding so good. Let's make it glitchy. Just before we continue, if you enjoy my content and you want to support me and my channel, then go check my new sample pack, Spectral Percussions. I'm offering 40% off for a limited time, and you can find the link in the description below. You need to start by recording your percussions into audio. Let's take the recording of our percussion group and let's stretch it all the way up. Let's solo the channel and let's record this again. And this time I will start playing around with the different warp modes. Now that we have this big file with a lot of glitchy sounds, let's place it under our percussions. Start by taking these two sounds and placing it just before the snare. Next I found this sound and I layered it under every kick. Just to add a bit more variation, under the first kick I layered this sound. Next I took this little sound and just faded it in. In context, I took this glitchy bit of the snare and placed it under every second snare. There is actually another amazing technique which you can use to create really cool percussion loops, but it's in this video. In this video, I will show you how you can take any percussion samples and easily turn them into this trippy top loop. Or take a bunch of percussion loops and with few clicks, turning them into an infinite percussion rhythm like the one is playing right now. You can also take these one-shot samples and turn them into any of these fills in a matter of seconds. All of these loops and one-shot samples are part of my Spectral Percussions sample pack, which you can get in the link below. Yo, let's start with technique number 1. Someone once called it controlled chaos. So on a MIDI channel, I have a sampler. Let's start by grouping it by toggling Ctrl G. Let's start with revealing the zone. Let's go to my Spectral Percussions sample pack, one shot, and let's grab 10 different samples. Let's drag and drop them into the zone. I will drag all of them to the key of C3 and drag them back to the key of C4. And then hover over the green line, right click, and distribute ranges equally. So now all of these samples are ranged between the key of C3 to the key of C4. Next, let's go to our sample selector. Let's hover over the blue line, right click, and also here distribute ranges equally. Then let's assign the sample selector, this little light blue line, to macro 1. So this blue line represents the area of which the first sample will be playing. So if I move the sample selector, you can see now the second sample is selected, now the third one, fourth one, fifth one, and so on. One more thing I want to do is assign the pitch to macro 2. Next, let's zoom in and let's make a MIDI clip, Command or Control Shift M, and let's fill in all the keys from C3 to C4. So if I loop this channel and solo it, at the moment we have this. Let's move the sample selector. And we can also change the pitch. You're probably starting to understand the power of this device. For you Ableton users, this device will be included in the sample pack. Let's take it a step forward though. If you're using Ableton, you can add an LFO. Let's change the rate to 16th, and let's change it from a sine wave to random, and let's map it to the sample selector. Next, let's take one of my favorite Max for Live modulation devices called Strange Mode, and we will map it to the transpose. Let's assign the range from 25 to 75, and let's have a listen. The percussion loop sounds a bit dry, so let's add my reverb rack from my Audio Alchemist collection, audio effect racks for Ableton, where you can easily dial in the room size. For technique number 2, we will head to the session view of Ableton. On an empty audio channel, let's drag and drop 10 different percussion loops. Make sure all of the loops are selected, click on this little window, and toggle on the follow action. If you're not familiar with the follow action in Ableton, this is a way for you to give an order for these 10 percussion loops to play in a certain order and rhythm. Let's see how it works. I want them to play in a 16th pattern and be triggered randomly. These two windows will determine what action will happen when one sample is playing. So I want any sample to play at any time. I will unlink them, and I will set this from 1 bar to 16th bar. Let's also press the legato, so whenever a sample is playing, next time it will trigger, it will continue from the exact same spot. Let's solo our channel, and let's play. Pretty cool. Let's record that into audio. Press tab and head back to our arrangement view. Make sure to arm Ableton and then press the spacebar to play. Make sure to click on this little button to go back to our arrangement view. And let's have a listen in context. And yes, this clap is also part of my Spectral Percussions sample pack. It's actually a really long clap. With technique number 3, we will easily create some drum fills. So on a MIDI channel, I have a bouncy note and a drum rack. If you're not familiar with bouncy note, this is a Max for Live device which was released with Ableton 11, and it's free for download on the Ableton website. I would highly recommend you get it. It's a very interesting sequencer. We'll set the note length and the quantize to 16th. And we will also set this to trigger automatically, rather than with a note. Let's click on this piano roll, and let's turn the drum rack on. Let's go to a Spectral Percussions sample pack, and let's drag in the first 24 one-shot samples. Now while I press play, you will see balls starting to bounce around here, triggering the different samples. Let's add some direction by moving the slider. You can also add a wall to block some of the balls. And let's record this into audio. After a bit of scrolling around within this sample that I just recorded, I came up with these amazing fills. So go practice these techniques, so next time you need a quick drum fill or you need some top loops, you can easily do that. In this video, let's explore 5 creative uses for Ableton's hybrid reverb. This plugin can produce much more than just classic reverb. But first of all, let's start with a basic overview of this plugin. This plugin is split into 2 sections. On the left hand side, we have a convolution reverb and on the right hand side we have an algorithmic reverb. Let's start with the convolution reverb. So a convolution reverb works in this way. Imagine hitting a snare drum in a big concert hall, recording this reverberation and then importing them into this plugin, then using those on sounds in your production. Ableton has provided us with numerous of those recordings, such as real places, chambers and large rooms, halls, plates, springs, and so on. You can also import any sound from your sample library into the convolution section of this reverb. So for example, let's take a crash and put it on these chords. Let's try a different example. Let's take this field recordings. And let's import that into the convolution reverb. Next, let's explore the algorithmic side of this reverb. An algorithmic reverb is a digital reverb that uses mathematical algorithm to simulate a sound of a real space. This reverb has 5 different modes. Let's explore the tides mode. You can think about this mode as a type of a spectral delay. Let's leave the decay in size as it is. Let's turn the damping to 0, tides to 100, rate to 16, wave all the way up, and phase to 0. Let's add a bit of a drum loop in the background. Let's explore another technique with the convolution section of this reverb. We will use the same drum loop, and this time let's increase the feedback to around 95%. Notice that the signal sounds very metallic, not so pleasing to the ear. But what happens when I start to introduce pre-delay? So if you enjoyed this video so far, please consider subscribing to my channel. I would really appreciate it. Thanks. In the next technique, I want to create a riser out of this reversed snare loop. So start by turning the blend knob to the max, so we're using only the algorithmic section of this reverb. I changed the mode to quartz, I increased the decay to 32 seconds. I turned off any EQ settings, I turned off the diffusion and mode to 0, and here I'm modulating the distant knob. This technique is best captured into audio. So then we can reverse the sample to create the riser. There's another really cool technique that we can use with this sample. Let's turn the blend knob to the left, so we're using only the convolution section of this reverb. Let's increase the feedback to 95, and let's increase the pre-delay to around 160. Then I want to automate the pre-delay to around 20 milliseconds. Let's reverse the sample and let's play them together. Two really cool ways to create risers out of the sounds in your project. For the next technique, I want to layer these 2 samples that I just made with a drum loop to create even more tension in this build-up. So here I'm using the algorithmic section of the reverb. I chose the quartz mode. The decay has remained unchanged. I have automation on the distance. It starts from 50% and goes all the way down to 0. The really cool thing about this technique is the freeze option, which freezing the incoming audio and repeating it infinitely. So play the loop again, and I've turned the freezing function halfway through. Now, let's layer that with the two samples we've made before. A couple of weeks ago, I came across a post on the Max for Live users Facebook group by Takuma from Rainbow Circuit presenting a new synthesizer. I was really impressed by this synth, so I approached Takuma and told him that I would absolutely love to test this synth. So he sent me a free copy. Thanks, Takuma. I've been playing with it for the last couple of weeks, and today I want to present you with one of the most unique Max for Live synthesizers. Let's go! So on the left hand side, we have the exciter, and on the right hand side we have the resonator. Think about it as a violin. The bow will be the exciter and the strings of the violin will be the resonator. So in order for this device to work, we need to drop any audio sample into the exciter. Let's take this loop. The exciter is a very simple granular synth with 3 controls. You can control the grain size, you can control the position, and the spray amount, which is essentially a random control. Next, let's toggle this little yellow square, where we have a few more controls. On the left bottom corner, we have an amp envelope, which controls the global envelope of the sound. We can also shape the individual grain by tilting it to either side or flattening it out. We also have a filter, which shapes the sound before it hits the resonator. On the right hand side, we have the resonator. The resonator is a series of 6 band passes which are tuned to a fixed harmonic ratio or can be tuned to a frequency. You can control the Q of these resonators with the resonant control. We also have shift and target. Shift is a simple pitch shifting effect. If I put the target at 1.6 kHz and on 100%, this means all of the 6 band passes will only play from 1.5K and above. We also have a simple modulation tab, which can be toggled between an envelope and an LFO. Let's assign LFO 1 to band 1 and let's increase the amount to 100%. Let's add some gain. We can change the tilt of the modulation. Now I want to show you a few real-world examples of what you can do with this synth. So I'm working on a little project with this beat. And have 4 instances of whistle loaded with the same drum loop used before. Let's start with adding some tension. I kept the position on 0, grain size on 19 milliseconds, and a bit of spray. I'm automating the resonance, so the width of the filters is opening over time. And I'm also automating the target, which adds a gradual pitch shifting effect to create some tension. Let's talk about how we can use this synth as a granular synth. I assigned the grain size to 221 milliseconds, which equals on 8th note in 136 BPM. I increased the resonance to 100% so we get the most organic sound out of this synth. I played around with the target, added modulation to band 1 to the grain size position, and also added a simple delay. Next, I wanted to make a little synth line. Let's first of all head to the global tab, where I took the global envelope, decreased the attack all the way down, decreased the sustain almost all the way down, and the decay pretty low, because I wanted kind of a placky sound. I did the same with the grain shape, which is the envelope that controls the individual grains. Grain size on about 50 milliseconds, and spray all the way down to 0. And finally, let's see how we can use this device as some sort of a metallic atmospheric sound. So I wrote a very simple chord, and I have a default preset of the whistle. I added a Valhalla Supermassive, which is a free plugin, and a reverb of your choice. This synth is very simple to use, but yet very powerful. I will add a link in the description below where you can get the synth. And if you made some cool sound design or a really cool track using this synth, I'll add my email in the link and in the description, and feel free to send me your music. I want to show you 5 techniques to add energy and excitement to any sound. So let's start with this melody. I want to add a bit more energy. In order to do that, I will add another layer and I will process that a bit differently. Let's use the shifter, Ctrl G to group the plugin. Press on this little icon on the left and create another chain. Now we have a chain with shifter, that will be our wet channel, and we have a chain with no plugins, that will be our dry channel. Let's add a bit of delay to this one. On our wet channel, I added an auto filter and a reverb. The auto filter, in combination with the tone slider, acts as a bandpass to place this layer in a certain area of the frequency spectrum. I've added automation for the rate and the amount. Let's play both layers together. This is one of these tricks where you don't notice it until I take it off. This is a great way to add tension and energy without overloading the listener. Next, I have this beautiful pad I made in Wavetable. To make this interesting, I added this plugin, Supermodal. It looks quite confusing, but actually it's really simple. On the left we have a filter, and on the right we have a modal section with 27 different models that you can choose from, and these resonate with your sounds and can transform them completely. Where this plugin comes to life, it's with these 4 slots for modulation. You can choose between all of these different options. I like to go with the sequencer because it's the most versatile option. So I have this sequencer on a rate of 2 bars, controlling the filter by 12 semitones. I've added another sequencer, also on a rate of 2 bars, and this one is also controlling the filter on a rate of 12 semitones. If you're not familiar with this plugin, I would warmly recommend you go check it out. I will add a link in the description below. Next I have this crunchy acid lid I made in Vital. start by adding 2 LFOs and 2 filters. One filter should be on a high pass. Let's change both LFOs mode to random. Sync them with the host tempo. This will be on a rate of 8th, and this will be on a rate of 4th. Let's make them slightly smoother and add a bit of jitter. We'll map the first LFO to the first filter's frequency. We'll map the same LFO to the resonant frequency of the second filter. Let's just adjust the range a bit. That's fine. Let's take the second LFO. We will assign it to the second filter's frequency and to the first filter's resonance. And let's do the same thing with the range. So right now we have this. What I really like to do is grab a delay or a reverb or both and add it after the filters. So let's take the hybrid reverb. Let's use just the convolution section of this reverb. Let's change the predelay to sync with the host tempo, and let's increase it to 6/16 notes. Let's increase the feedback to around 50%. I want to layer this sound with the pad we made before. But it sounds a bit messy. So let's head over to the pad and we'll copy this plugin onto our crunchy acid lead. And we'll place it just before the reverb. Still not quite noticeable, so let's change the filter. Much better. Next I have this beautiful melody. How we can add energy to this one? Let's grab a FabFilter Saturn. You might not know about it, but if you head to the effects section and you choose smudge, you get this really cool smearing effect. So I applied some automation to get the effect in and out. Adds another texture around the sound, which adds a lot of energy and interest. But I'm not done with this sound just yet. What I like to do often is take one note of the melody and mute it, and then copy that into a new sound with a repeating pattern. I filtered the sound heavily, and I added a phaser with a slight modulation on the frequency. And now let's play both of these sounds together. Technique number 1, time machine. Grab a delay plugin. Ctrl-G to group. Change from sync to time. Map the time to macro 1. Press on map. Set the minimum value to 40 milliseconds and the maximum value to 800. Change the mode to ping pong. Technique number 2, echo chambers. Grab an echo plugin. Ctrl-G to group. Change from sync to time. Map the time to macro 1. Turn the filter off. Feedback to around 80%. In the modulation, unsync the rate and map the frequency to macro 1. Click on map. In the delay time, set the minimum value to 5 milliseconds and the maximum value to 20 milliseconds. The modulation frequency amount, set the minimum value to 0.08 and the maximum value to 2K. Technique number 3, space bounce. Grab an echo plugin, Ctrl-G to group, change from sync to time, map the time to macro 1. Change the minimum value to 20 milliseconds and the maximum value to 200. Feedback to around 80%. In the filter, cut a bit the lows and add a bit of a bump around 5K. In the modulation tab, unsync the rate and reduce the frequency all the way down to around 0.05. Let's add about 70% of delay modulation and let's change the mode to triangle. Let's add a bit of reverb to make it a bit more spacey. Next up, delay ripples. Grab an echo plugin, Ctrl-G to group, assign the division to macro 1. Turn the filter off and increase the delay to 98%. Dry wet to 50% and change to ping pong. In the modulation tab, increase the delay modulation to 100% and toggles time 4. Change the mode to random. If you want to smooth it out, assign the filter modulation to macro 2 and the envelope mix to macro 2 as well. Technique number 5, bubbles. Go to the reverb and resonance section in the audio effects and choose hybrid reverb. Group the plugin, Ctrl-G. Let's turn the blend to the left so we're only using the convolution section of this reverb. Choose texture and from the impulse response, choose bubbles. Increase the feedback to 100% and the size to 20. Let's assign the pre-delay to macro 1 and this will act as our delay time. Experiment with different decay times. You can also experiment with different spaces. Let's try plates. Next time warp. For this technique you will need the pitch loop 89. If you have an Ableton 10 suit and above, you can download it for free. This is a Max for Live device. Let's start by toggling the shorts on and increasing the feedback to around 80%. Ctrl-G, group the plugin and assign the segment to macro 1. Let's add 3 semitone of pitch on the left channel. You can also experiment with adding different pitches to the right and left channel. Let's change the left channel to 7 semitones and the right to -3. Let's toggle the shorts off. Let's turn it back on and let's change to left and right mode. That was quick. I actually made a rack containing all of these delay tricks. If you want to support my channel, you can get this creative delay rack, plus 7 amazing audio effect rack. You know that feeling when you get creative block and you run out of inspiration? One of my favorite ways to deal with it is to limit my options, such as using one plugin and trying to get the most out of it. It's like trying to cook a meal from the few ingredients you have left in your fridge. It forces you to get creative. Ableton Shifter is a great plugin to explore because it has so much to offer. Watch this video all the way to the end because there is one principle that ties all of the techniques together. Let's start with multi-layering leads. So I have this simple melody with a basic sound which I made in Vital. Let's start by loading a shifter. Ctrl G to group, then press on this little icon down here and right click and create a chain. Let's right click again and create another chain. I wanted to make the second chain wet by adding a bit of reverb. I'm using Valhalla Supermassive. On the first chain we have the shifter. Let's play around with the amount and the rate. After playing around with this plugin, I added automation on the rate and the amount, and I also added a bit of spin to make it a bit wider. Let's play both layers together. Added a third layer on ring mode. You can change the mode in the top right corner. This has a fixed rate of 4 bars and a bit of pitch modulation. Let's add all layers together. Next I have this FM stub, which I also made in Vital. This time I just wanted to make it a bit wider. The shifter is a great widening tool, and it's really simple. I added 1 semitone of pitch modulation, and all you need to do to make it wider is adding a bit of spin. I have another really simple melody with a bit of delay. This time let's play with the pitch envelope and the window. Let's add 7 semitones of pitch modulation here as well. Notice that with low window amount, it sounds smooth. And with high window amount, it sounds grainy. So let's add a bit of pitch envelope as well. The next technique is what I like to call audio vomit. So I have this percussion loop. I've added this rack, which is a combination of 2 shifter plugins assigned to the various macros. As we record this into audio, let's flip between the presets. Nice. So first I wanted to take a little segment of this recording and layer it under my kick. Next, I want to take another snippet of this recording and add it as a swoosh before my snare. And third, I wanted to make a dark techno pack. So I took this little pack, added a lot of overdrive. On the shifter, I turned the delay on, changed the rate to 16th, cranked the feedback to 98%, and lowered the tone, which is essentially a filter. This plugin works also really well on vocals. So I have this recording of myself saying, "If you're enjoying this video, then subscribe to my channel." I split this vocal into 4 different channels. On the first channel, I have the words, "If you're enjoying this." I took the first 16th of this recording and just copied and pasted throughout. On the shifter, I've automated the chorus, a window, and I turned the delay at the end. On the second channel, I have the word video. On the shifter, I turned the delay up, added a bit of pitch modulation, and a bit of width. Video. On the third channel, I have the words, then subscribe to my channel. On the shifter, I increase the amount to around 10 semitones, and a pretty low rate, and a bit of spin to make it wider.
Then subscribe to my channel.
Then I took the word
Channel.
and I recorded it into audio with a bit of delay.
Channel. 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 Channel.
And altogether,
If you enjoyed this video,
Then subscribe to my channel. Channel. Channel.
I thought this would work really nicely just before the drop, but I wanted to make a build-up just before that. So I found this beautiful drone. And if you drop it into an empty MIDI channel, a sampler will be opened automatically. Let's add an instance of shifter, this time on frequency mode. Then I took this snare roll. Let's consolidate first, and let's add a bit of a fade. Let's copy and paste the same shifter to the snare roll.
if you enjoyed this video,
Then subscribe to my channel.
So as I said in the beginning, there is one principle that ties it all together, and that is pitch and movement. Notice how we always started with a static and basic sound, and we added a combination of pitch and movement to bring these sounds up to life. Now, if you want to learn about another really cool plugin that can do just that, watch this video. It's right here. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about a powerful Max for Live device, Opal by Force. If you want to see a full walkthrough of this plugin, there are a couple of other great videos on YouTube that will do that. What I want to do today is show you 8 sound design tricks you could use this plugin for creating every element in your track. I truly believe this is a powerful plugin. I approached Force and asked them if I could make a video about this plugin, so they sent me a free copy. So thank you very much, and let's start. So number 1 is the sequencer. Let's talk about all the different features of the sequencer because it's really powerful. Let's start by adding 2 notes and let's reduce the steps from 16th to 4. You can choose your root note right here. For this track I'm working on the key of B. On the second tab we have the note where we can change each individual note by clicking and sliding up. Next we have probability. So at the moment we have 33% that will play the second note. Let's slide it back to 100. Next we have modulo. This is really cool. So if we increase this number to 2, it means that we'll play this note on the first loop and we'll mute it on the second loop. If I change this number to 2 on 2, it means that this note will be muted at the first loop and played at the second loop. So great possibilities here with randomization. Let's put them back to normal. Next we have ratchet, so let's add 4 notes here. And we can even change the swing of the ratchet. And lastly, we have nudge, where I can move this note off the grid. And you can also have up to 8 pages and 128 steps, as well as you can have up to 64 patterns. I can copy the pattern from here into number 2 and paste it, and now I have the same pattern copied into here, and I can modify it further. Number 2, let's make some weird basses. This device is so easy with making weird basses as well as super clean ones. So to begin with, I have this beat. If you watched some of my videos in the past, you know that I like to record my basses into audio to make sure there is no clash between the tail of the bass and the kick. I will show you in a bit what I mean. So let's solo this opal, let's decrease the steps to 4, and let's start playing around until we find some cool basses. I want to start by recording this into audio, just to have like this nice clicky bass. Notice that this note is actually pretty long, and if I put it here, it will overlap with the kick, and that will interfere with the phase of this kick, which means we will have a reduction in volume. So let's drag it here. And now we have a nice offbeat bass. But we can make some more cool basses with it. Let's keep going. Let's start by increasing the hold. Let's change the modulation. Let's delete one of the notes. Let's see what we have at the moment. Let's add some noise. Let's reduce it by 12 semitones. Let's increase the hold a bit more. Nice. Let's record this into audio as well. Let's try to do something else. Let's play with the phase. Add some feedback. And let's record this into audio as well. Okay, so we have 3 different notes. Let's try to make a pattern out of it. Let's start by zooming in, adding a bit of a fade to make sure this bass note doesn't clash with the kick. I pretty like this bass. Let's keep it simple for the sake of this tutorial. Let's go on to the next one. So, number 3. And this is to do with recording all of the different engines of opal. So on opal, we have 6 different engines. And it can get really messy if you have 6 different sounds playing from the same device all at the same time. So there is a way to play all of the different engines, each one from its own channel. And that is really important for the next steps of this tutorial to help us keep a clean mix. So on a MIDI channel, I have an opal. And let's insert an audio channel just underneath. Let's set the audio channel to receive audio from opal. Instead of post mixer, let's assign it for 3 or 4. Let's toggle in. And now this audio channel will receive audio from the first engine in opal. Let's repeat the process another 5 times and set each channel to receive audio from a different engine. Let's put opal and the 6 audio channels into a group. Let's mute opal and let's add 1 note for the first 3 engines. You can now see that each audio channel is receiving audio from a different engine. We can now add different processing for each channel, such as EQ, compression, different reverbs, or delays, and keep processing it from there. Let's go on for the next step. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. If you are heading to your user library, you can literally drag and drop this group into your user library, and then you have it saved. So then what you can do is, I can drag and drop the one I saved already before into here, so I don't need to do it every time from scratch. Number 4, and this is parameter locks. So if you notice, we didn't talk about the first tab in the sequencer, and that's for a specific reason. So let's add 4 different notes. The cool thing about it, that we can assign a unique value for every step in the sequencer for each control of the engine. So let's take the mod depth and let's increase it to some of the notes. All you need to do is slide up. Let's take the ratio and increase it for this one. let's decrease the release and let's only increase it for some of the notes. Notice that every parameter I click on is showing down here. Let's take the mode sweep and the mode time and add it to the first note. Let's also add some unison. Let's add some noise to some of them. Pretty cool, but we can take it a step further. If you click on this tab, you can send some reverb in. So, if you go to the last tab, we can set the space of the reverb. Let's decrease a bit the size, and let's decrease the tail so it's not too big. And then we can send some reverb by clicking on the send here, going back to the gem sequencer. Need to click on the number. Now we have mixed reverb. Let's assign a bit of reverb to this one. Number 5. Let's make some sick atmospheres. Let's head to the second tab, the Mass Engine, and let's start play around. We want a long note, so first of all, let's reduce the steps to 4. And let's slow down the sequencer to a rate of 8. And let's add one note. Let's head to this tab and let's turn the first sequencer off for now. Let's start by adding some warp. 12 semitones up. Let's add some release and some hold. Let's go to the modulation tab. Let's decrease the rate of the LFO and add some spread. Let's change the destination here from noise filter to tonal warp. And let's add a lot of reverb as well. So number 6, let's make some techno percussion loops using another engine. Let's head to Dust. Dust is essentially a noise generator. Let's start by reducing the steps to 8, and let's write a simple sequence like this. Let's have a listen. Let's head to this tab and let's reduce the tone. Let's add some reverb. Let's change the space. And let's just shape it a bit more. So, we also have a granular engine here called Slate. Let's start by dropping in a sample. So first of all, we can start by changing the length of the loop. Let's make it really, really small. Let's make sure that we mute the percussion loop we made before, and let's make another sequence of 4 notes this time, and it will be something like so. Let's change the start position. We can also change the direction. Let's decrease the release. Let's listen to how this sounds together with the previous loop. I'm happy with that. Let's process this individually. Let's start by adding EQ to both channels. And a bit of mid-side EQ for the reverb. Okay, we have reached number 8, and this is the coolest sound design feature of this plugin. Let's head to our user library and let's drop another set of Opal into our project. If you click on this button right here, you have this little pop-up window. Let's make it a bit bigger. Bigger. Nice. And this is our randomizer tab. Okay, this is super powerful and can get you some really cool sound with no effort. We have a global randomizer for every sound and for every pattern. Let's talk about the sound first of all. So if I click this, you can see that we have a randomized sound right here. I can also randomize the pattern, but with the pattern there's few more controls you need to be aware of. One is the density and the other one is the lock. So if I randomize the pattern now with 50 on the locks, there's a 50% chance that a random parameter lock will appear on every step of the sequencer. Remember, parameter locks is these, when I add some unison, for example, to this step, but not for this step. Density is the density of the notes. So if we keep it on a low density, if I press random, you see we only have 2 little notes appearing. Press random again only 2. If the density is high, we have a lot of notes appearing. Let's keep this on 50 and let's see what kind of sound we have. If I'm not happy with this sound, I have a few other random controls to just modify it a bit. One is the wiggle. So wiggle would just change the sound slightly. And the other one is the scrumble. The scrumble would just change the pattern slightly. Let's start with the wiggle. The wiggle only randomized the parameters slightly, so the characteristic stays the same, but maybe you want a slightly different version. This is so useful instead of going and modifying each and different parameter. Scrumble works in the same way, and then we also have move forward and move backwards, so just focus on the sequencer for now. Let's scrumble it. And it's just scrumbling all the different notes that we have in a different order. But I can also move them forward or backwards. The next cool thing about this is this surprise me button. This will randomize all the engines and all of the sequences. Let's click on it until we find something cool. I mean, what the fuck? If you make techno or if you make dark music, this is a beast of a device. I've never seen anything like it. I want to show you 4 free amazing Max for Live devices that will save you time, help you to improve your mixing skills and sound design techniques. So imagine the next scenario. You have a melody which has a lot of resonant peaks in it and it sounds quite harsh. And it needs to be cleaned with an EQ. There are a few ways you can approach doing it. One is using an expensive tool such as Soothe 2 that will do the work for you. Think about it as an AI tool that will reduce the peak resonance for you. Another option is using a dynamic EQ, such as FabFilter Pro Q3, which is an also fairly expensive tool. You will have to set up an EQ band for every note in the frequency, and that'll be quite time consuming. Or you could use MIDI to EQ8. So have this melody. Which has a lot of peaks and sounds quite harsh. Next, let's map the MIDI to EQ8 to one of your band's frequency. Let's reduce the gain and decrease the width. Next, we will have to play with the ratio to find the right notes. You can experiment with loading few instances of the MIDI to EQ8. We will map them to different bands and we will set them in the same way. And here you have it, an automatic key follow pick reduction in Ableton. Something that before was only available as an expensive third-party tool. Next up is a sound design tool that will allow you to take any sound from your production and create with it lush and evolving soundscapes. So this plugin is pretty simple. Let's load an instance of Grain Freeze into the same melody. All you need to do is press on the ready button and now the playback is frozen. You can change the position, grain size, spray amount, you can add voices to make it wide, you can change the pitch, let's add an octave, and add chorus. Lush soundscapes in seconds. Are you bored of using a traditional LFO tool with the traditional sine wave and sawtooth shapes? Meet Strange Mode. This tool will create evolving shapes which you never imagined possible. As you can see on this tool, we have a very interesting shape which is taking place on this display. Let's map the X position to the position on grain freeze, the Y to the grain, and the Z to the spray. Let's decrease the speed so the plugin evolves slowly over time. Let's play the melody and capture the audio. That was absolutely sick. Next up is a tool that will help you make better decisions when compressing any sound. We will work on the percussion loop we have in this segment. This tool doesn't have the most catchy name, VC3.1. You need to load one instance before the compressor as the sender and loading one after the compressor as the receiver. What this tool allows you to do is to adjust the gain correctly. So if you have a compressing sound and it sounds way too quiet and you're not quite sure how much gain to add, this tool will solve that problem. So let's play the percussion loop. Notice the numbers here on the sender, minus 30 dB, and the receiver, minus 37 dB. That means I need to add 7 dB of makeup gain. And you can see that we managed to match these numbers.